The diplomatic station called Harmony Prime floated at the edge of neutral space like a jewel against the black void of the cosmos. And Ambassador Park Ji-won had been summoned here for reasons that remained deliberately unclear until this very moment. She sat across from the Velith delegation in a chamber designed to impress lesser species with its grandeur. And she had to admit the architecture was genuinely beautiful in ways that transcended cultural boundaries. High Mediator Sirith stood at the center of the curved table where 7 Velith officials watched the lone human with expressions that mixed concern and barely hidden condescension. And his tall, slender form moved with the grace of a species that had never known predators on their homeworld. Ambassador Park, Sirith began in a voice like wind through crystal chimes. We have watched your species with great interest since you first ventured beyond your star system nearly 2 centuries ago. Park Ji-won nodded and kept her expression neutral as she had been trained to do, in situations where the other party clearly believed they held all the power. The Velith Collective has protected younger species for over 40,000 years. Sirith continued while holographic displays flickered to life around the chamber, showing images of various alien civilizations living under Velith guidance. And we have seen what happens when promising peoples are left to face the galaxies. Dangers alone. The images shifted to show destroyed worlds and extinct species and civilizations that had burned themselves out through war or catastrophe, or simple inability to adapt to the harsh realities of existence among the stars. Humanity concerns us deeply. Another Velith official interjected with a tone that suggested she was stating obvious facts rather than opinions. Your expansion has been reckless beyond measure, and your colonies exist on worlds that no sensible species would attempt to inhabit. Park Ji-won tilted her head slightly but still said nothing as she waited for them to reach the point of this elaborate presentation. Sirith gestured, and new images appeared showing human colonies on volcanic worlds and frozen moons and planets where the very air could kill an unprotected person in minutes. And alongside these images ran casualty figures and disaster reports and statistics that painted humanity as a species determined to die in the most dramatic ways possible. You have lost over 300,000 colonists in the past decade alone, Sirith said, with what sounded like genuine sorrow in his melodic voice. 300,000 lives ended by preventable disasters on worlds that should never have been settled in the first place. We are aware of our losses. Park Ji-won finally spoke, and her voice was calm and measured and revealed nothing of her thoughts. And you must also be aware that this cannot continue, Sirith replied as he moved closer to where she sat. The galaxy is far more dangerous than humanity yet understands, and there are threats beyond your borders that would destroy your entire civilization without effort. He paused for effect in the way diplomats across all species seemed to do when they believed they were about to deliver news that would change everything. The Velith Collective wishes to offer humanity full protectorate status, Sirith announced with the air of someone presenting an incredible gift. We will defend your space with our fleets and manage your more dangerous colonies through proper oversight and regulate your expansion to ensure it proceeds safely and shelter you from the many threats you do not yet know exist. The other Velith officials nodded in agreement, and their expressions suggested they expected gratitude or perhaps tearful acceptance of this generous offer. In exchange, Sirith continued, humanity would accept Velith guidance in matters of colonization and foreign relations and military development, until such time as you have matured sufficiently to handle these responsibilities independently. Park Ji-won sat in silence for a long moment, and the Velith seemed to interpret this as shock or perhaps the overwhelmed reaction of someone processing an offer beyond their wildest dreams. Then she laughed. The sound was not mocking or cruel, but warm and genuine, and utterly unexpected. and it echoed through the grand chamber in a way that made several Velith officials shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Forgive me," Park Ji-won said as her laughter subsided into a smile that somehow made the Velith more nervous than the laughter had. "I mean no disrespect to your offer or your intentions, which I believe are genuinely kind. Then why do you laugh at salvation?" One of the officials demanded with clear irritation, breaking through diplomatic composure. "Because you have made this offer without understanding what you are offering it to," Park Ji-won replied as she rose from her seat and walked toward the holographic displays, still showing images of human disasters and losses. "We know exactly what humanity is," Sirith said with confidence that was beginning to waver. "A young and reckless species that has not yet learned the wisdom that comes with age and experience." "No," Park Ji-won said as she turned to face them, and something in her eyes made Sirith take an involuntary step backward. "You know what humanity has done, but you do not understand what humanity is, and that gap in your knowledge is dangerous. Explain yourself," Sirith demanded, though his voice had lost some of its earlier certainty. "I will," Park Ji-won agreed. "But first, I must give you a warning because my government requires me to do so before these conversations proceed any further." "A warning," another official repeated with disbelief clear in her tone. "You are warning us?" "Yes," Park Ji-won confirmed without any trace of humor remaining in her expression. "The United Earth government has a policy that any species or organization that attempts to place humanity under protective control must first be warned about the consequences of such actions." The chamber fell silent as the Velith delegation processed this unexpected turn in what they had assumed would be a simple negotiation. "Humanity appreciates your concern," Park Ji-won continued in a voice that had grown colder with each word. "We recognize that you believe you are acting in our best interest, and we do not doubt the sincerity of your compassion. Then accept our protection," Sirith urged with genuine confusion evident in his features. "We cannot," Park Ji-won said simply, "and if you attempt to impose it against our will, then you will discover why every species that has tried to cage humanity for its own good no longer exists in any meaningful form." Sirith stared at the human ambassador, and for the first time since the Velith had achieved spaceflight, he felt something that his species had nearly forgotten how to feel. He felt uncertain. "This is not a threat," Park Ji-won clarified as she returned to her seat. "This is a warning given out of respect for your long history and genuine appreciation for your good intentions." "What is the difference?" Sirith asked quietly. "A threat is what you give to enemies," Park Ji-won replied. "A warning is what you give to potential friends so they do not accidentally become enemies." The holographic displays continued to show images of human colonies on impossible worlds while the Velith delegation sat in stunned silence. "Why would you reject safety?" Sirith finally demanded with something close to desperation in his voice. "Why would any species choose danger and death over protection and peace?" Park Ji-won smiled again, but this time there was no warmth in it, and no humor, and nothing that the Velith could recognize as familiar. "Because you are asking the wrong question," she said. "The question is not why we reject safety, but rather what happens when you try to force safety upon those who have never been safe and never wanted to be." She leaned forward and her eyes held Sirith with an intensity that made the debate ancient diplomat feel young and naive. "Would you like me to explain what humanity truly is?" she asked. "Or would you prefer to withdraw your offer and forget this conversation ever happened?" Sirith should have chosen the second option. He did not. The shuttle descended through clouds of ash and toxic gas, while High Mediator Sirath pressed himself against the viewport and tried to understand why any species would choose to live in such a place. New Bizon spread across a volcanic plain that glowed orange with rivers of molten rock, while massive eruptions painted the horizon with fire and the ground shook with constant tremors that would have driven most species to madness. This is insane, Sirith whispered as the shuttle navigated between columns of smoke and ash that rose kilometers into the poisoned sky. This is home, Park Ji-won replied with a warmth in her voice that made no sense given what lay outside the viewport. For 50,000 humans who chose this world over a dozen safer alternatives. The shuttle touched down inside a massive dome that protected a thriving city from the hellscape outside, and Sirith found himself surrounded by humans going about their daily lives as if they were not living on the edge of constant destruction. Children ran through streets that were clean and well-maintained while adults worked and laughed and argued in ways that suggested they had never considered leaving this impossible place. Governor Choi Min-yuk will meet us at the Central Administrative Complex, Park Ji-won explained as they walked through the dome city, while Sirith tried to reconcile what he was seeing with what he believed about rational behavior. Why are they smiling? Sirith asked as he watched a group of workers repairing damage from what appeared to be a recent earthquake while trading jokes and laughing at each other's mistakes. Because the earthquake did not kill them, Park Ji-won replied as if this was obvious, and because the repairs give them something useful to do while they wait for the next one, they expect another earthquake. Sirith said with disbelief. They expect many earthquakes, Park Ji-won confirmed, and volcanic eruptions and toxic gas leaks and a dozen other disasters that would make any sensible species relocate to a safer world. Then, why did they stay? Sirith demanded as frustration broke through his diplomatic composure. Ask them, Park Ji-won suggested as she gestured toward the workers who had noticed the alien visitor and were watching with curiosity rather than fear. Sirith approached the work crew, and they stopped what they were doing to greet him with the casual friendliness that seemed to characterize humans everywhere. High Mediator Sirith of the Velith Collective. He introduced himself. I am here to understand why your people choose to live in such a dangerous place. An older woman with calloused hands and gray hair tied back in a practical style stepped forward and smiled at him with the patience of someone explaining something to a child. My name is Baek Yoonji, she said, and I have lived on New Bizan for 43 years since I was 12 years old. 43 years on this world, Sirith repeated with amazement. How many times have you nearly died? Lost count after the first decade. Baek Yoonji replied with a shrug that suggested this was not particularly important. The volcanoes got me twice, and there was a gas leak that put me in medical for a month, and the big earthquake of 38 collapsed my first house with me inside. And you did not leave. Sirith asked, where would I go? Baek Yoonji replied with genuine confusion. This is my home, and these are my people, and that volcano over there gave us the geothermal energy that powers half this sector. She pointed toward a massive peak that was currently spewing fire and ash into the atmosphere, and her expression held something that Sirith could only describe as affection. We named her grandmother. Baek Yoonji continued, because she is old and angry and dangerous, but she keeps us warm when the universe gets cold. Sirith has had no response to this, and he stood in silence while the work crew returned to their repairs, and Park Ji-won led him deeper into the dome city. The Central Administrative Complex was a utilitarian structure that prioritized function over form, and Governor Choi Min-yuk met them at the entrance with a handshake that was firm enough to convey confidence without being aggressive. Ambassador Park, he said with a respectful nod. And High Mediator Sirith of the Velith Collective, who I understand wants to offer us protection from our own choices. I want to understand why protection is necessary, Sirith replied. Your colony exists in conditions that no rational species would tolerate, and your people seem to treat constant danger as normal, because it is normal. Governor Choi replied as he led them into the building. Normal for humans at least who have never known a world without danger and have learned to find meaning in the struggle against it. He brought them to an observation deck that offered a panoramic view of both the dome city and the volcanic hellscape beyond its protective barriers. Do you know what we produce here? Governor Choi asked. Geothermal energy, Sirith replied. Ambassador Park mentioned that your colony supplies power to several nearby systems. Energy, yes. Governor Choi agreed, but also innovation and discovery, and the kind of knowledge that can only be gained by doing things that everyone else considers impossible. He pulled up holographic displays, showing technical schematics that Sirith did not fully understand, but could recognize as advanced even by Velis standards. Our engineers have developed thermal harvesting technology that is 30% more efficient than anything else in the galaxy. Governor Choi explained, because they had to solve problems that no one on a safe world would ever encounter. You could have developed this technology in simulation, Sirith pointed out. No. Governor Choi replied with absolute certainty. We could not have, because simulation cannot replicate the pressure of knowing that failure means death. He turned to face Sirith directly, and his expression held the same steel that the High Mediator had seen in Ambassador Park. Our people do not innovate because they are curious. Governor Choi said, they innovate because they must, and that necessity drives them to achievements that comfortable species cannot imagine. At the cost of how many lives? Sirith asked. Fewer than you think. Governor Choi replied, our mortality rate has dropped every decade since the colony was founded, because each generation learns from the mistakes of the last and builds better systems to survive what this world throws at us. But you could eliminate that mortality entirely by relocating. Sirith pressed, and we would eliminate everything that makes this colony valuable. Governor Choi countered, the technology and the expertise and the people who have been forged by challenges that your protectorate species will never face. He walked to the window and looked out at the volcanic landscape with an expression that mixed respect and defiance. Your protected peoples live in peace. Governor Choi said, they are safe and healthy, and their populations grow steadily under your care. Yes, Sirith agreed with diminished pride. And when they face a challenge they cannot overcome, they call for Velith help and you save them. Governor Choi continued, because they have never learned to save themselves. We protect them because they need protection. Sirith said, though his voice sounded defensive even to his own ears. You protect them because they have been taught that they cannot survive without protection. Governor Choi replied, and that teaching has become a self-fulfilling prophecy that keeps them dependent on you forever. The ground shook as a tremor ran through the complex, and Sirith grabbed for support while the humans around him barely reacted beyond checking their personal devices for updates. Seismic event in Sector 7. Someone announced calmly, damage assessment teams deploying now. Governor Choi watched the response with obvious pride as humans throughout the complex shifted into crisis management mode without panic or hesitation. This is what you cannot give us, he said to Sirith. This confidence in ourselves and our ability to handle whatever the universe throws at us. We could give you peace, Sirith offered quietly. Peace is not given, Governor Choi replied. Peace is earned by those strong enough to defend it, and your protection would make us weak. An alarm sounded and the holographic displays shifted to show a massive thermal plume rising from one of the larger volcanoes outside the dome. Eruption incoming, someone announced. Category 4 by preliminary readings. Sirith felt fear rising in his chest, but the humans around him showed no signs of panic as they began coordinating their response to a disaster that would have sent any Velith protectorate. Species fleeing for their lives. Would you like to see how we handle a real crisis? Governor Choi asked with a smile that held no mockery, but something that might have been an invitation. Sirith should have declined and returned to the safety of the shuttle. He did not. The eruption painted the sky in shades of orange and red, while ash fell like snow across the dome city and High Mediator. Sirith watched in disbelief as humans mobilized not away from the disaster, but toward it, emergency teams to deployment stations. The announcement echoed through the administrative complex. Thermal harvesting units prepare for capture protocols and evacuation. Coordinators begin Sector 7 relocation procedures. Governor Choi Min-yuk moved through the chaos with calm efficiency, while issuing orders that his people followed without question or hesitation. The eruption is larger than predicted. One of his advisors reported, "Lava flow is heading for the eastern thermal plants, and we have 37 workers in the affected area. Get them out." Governor Choi ordered, "And prep the demolition teams, because we may need to redirect the flow." Redirect a lava flow. Sirith interrupted with horror clear in his voice. "That is not possible. It is not easy." Governor Choi corrected as he pulled up tactical displays showing the volcanic terrain and the threatened facilities. "But we have done it before, and we will do it again." Ambassador Park Ji-won appeared at Sirith's side and guided him toward an observation post where he could watch the response without interfering with the critical work happening around him. "Your people are running towards certain death," Sirith said as he watched emergency vehicles speeding across the volcanic plain toward the growing eruption. "They are running toward their friends and colleagues who need help," Park Ji-won replied, "and toward equipment that took years to build, and toward a challenge that they have trained their entire lives to face." Outside the dome, a team of engineers was setting up what looked like heavy mining equipment along a ridge that would intersect the advancing lava flow. "What are they doing?" Sirith asked. "Controlled demolition," Park Ji-won explained. "They will collapse that ridge to create a channel that redirects the lava away from the thermal plants and toward a natural depression that can contain it. That will put them directly in the path of the eruption." Sirith observed with growing anxiety. "Yes," Park Ji-won agreed. "And they know exactly how much time they have and exactly what they need to do. And they will succeed because failure is not something humans accept easily." Sirith watched as the demolition team worked with precise efficiency while the lava crept closer and the ground shook with the fury of the eruption that was reshaping the landscape around them. "Evacuation of Sector 7 complete," someone announced. "All 37 workers accounted for and medical teams standing by. Demolition charges set." Another voice reported, "Ready for detonation on your command, Governor." Governor Choi studied the tactical displays for a moment. That stretched into eternity before nodding once. "Detonate," he ordered. The ridge exploded in a cascade of rock and debris that carved a new channel across the volcanic plain, and the lava flow shifted direction like a river finding a new course toward the sea. "Flow redirected successfully," the announcement came with a note of triumph that made Sirith realize these people were not just surviving the disaster, but celebrating their victory over it. Thermal harvesting teams move in. Governor Choi ordered, "Let us not waste this opportunity." "Opportunity," Sirith repeated with disbelief. "You are treating a volcanic eruption as an opportunity. Category 4 eruptions release enormous of thermal energy," Park Ji-won explained. "Our harvesting technology can capture a significant portion of that energy and convert it to power that will fuel this colony and several neighboring systems for months." Sirith watched as specialized vehicles moved toward the redirected lava flow and began deploying equipment that extracted heat from the molten rock with technology he did not fully understand. Someone actually complained that this eruption is smaller than last month's, he said, as he remembered a comment he had heard during the initial response. "That would be Chief Engineer Yun," Park Ji-won confirmed with a slight smile. "She has been hoping for a Category 5 eruption to test her new thermal conversion systems. She wants a larger disaster," Sirith said slowly as he tried to wrap his mind around a perspective so alien to everything he believed about rational behavior. "She wants a larger challenge," Park Ji-won corrected. because overcoming larger challenges produces greater achievements. And greater achievements inspire others to push even further. The observation post shook as an aftershock ran through the region, but the humans around Sirith barely reacted beyond checking their displays for new information. I have watched thousands of species face disasters, Sirith said quietly. Some panic and some freeze, and some organize efficient evacuations that minimize casualties and preserve lives. And humans? Park Ji-won asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer. Humans treat disasters as tests to be passed. Sirith replied with something approaching wonder in his voice, as challenges to be overcome rather than tragedies to be survived. Now you begin to understand. Park Ji-won said. Governor Choi approached them as the immediate crisis subsided, and the response shifted from emergency management to cleanup and assessment. Final casualty report. He announced 3 minor injuries from equipment malfunctions during the evacuation and 0 fatalities. 0. Sirith repeated with surprise. Our emergency protocols have been refined through decades of experience, Governor Choi explained. Every disaster teaches us something, and every lesson makes us better prepared for the next one. But you cannot eliminate all risk, Sirith pointed out. We do not want to eliminate all risk, Governor Choi replied with a patience that suggested he understood how difficult this concept was for the Velith to grasp. Risk is the price we pay for growth, and growth is the only thing that makes survival meaningful. He led them back into the administrative complex, where workers were already calculating the energy yield from the captured thermal output and planning improvements for the next eruption. Your protected species live in peace, Governor Choi said as they walked. They are safe and comfortable, and their populations grow steadily under your care. You have made this observation before, Sirith noted, because it is the heart of everything you do not understand about us. Governor Choi replied, Your protectorates have not faced a real challenge in thousands of years because you solve every problem before they have to. That is our purpose, Sirith said with diminished conviction. And because you solve their problems, they never learn to solve problems themselves. Governor Choi continued, They become dependent on you for everything, and that dependency makes them weak in ways that safety cannot cure. We make them weak by protecting them, Sirith said slowly as understanding began to dawn in his ancient mind. You make them children forever. Governor Choi agreed. Comfortable children who live long and peaceful lives, but who will never achieve anything that the galaxy remembers. He stopped walking and faced Sirith with an expression that mixed compassion and resolve. Humanity will never accept that fate. He said, We would rather die free and struggling than live safe and diminished. Sirith stood in silence for a long moment, while the colony around him continued its work with the casual confidence of people who had faced death and chosen to laugh in its face. I must return to Harmony Prime, he finally said. I must tell the collective what I have seen and what I now understand. Will they listen? Park Ji-won asked. Some will, Sirith replied. Others will not, because they have spent 40,000 years believing that protection is always better than freedom. And if they choose not to listen, Governor Choi asked. Sirith remembered the warning that Ambassador Park had given at the beginning of this journey, and he understood now that it had not been a threat or a boast, but a simple statement of fact. Then they will learn the way humanity teaches its hardest lessons, Sirith said quietly. He should have felt confident that his people would choose wisdom. He did not. 3 months after High Mediator Sirith returned to Harmony Prime with his report, the Velith Protective Council voted to implement emergency guardianship over human space, despite his urgent recommendations against such action. The humans are too reckless to be trusted with their own governance, Councillor Theris declared during the final debate while Sirith watched with growing dread. Their rejection of our generous offer proves they lack the wisdom to recognize what is best for them. Their rejection proves exactly the opposite. Sirith argued with a desperation that earned him cold looks from his colleagues. They understand themselves better than we understand them, and we ignore that understanding at our peril. You have become sympathetic to their chaos, another counselor accused. Your time among them has clouded your judgment. The vote proceeded over Sirith's objections, and the Velith peacekeeping fleet deployed to humanity's outer colonies with orders to establish protective oversight and prevent further reckless expansion. Ambassador Park Ji-won received the news with the calm acceptance of someone who had expected this outcome all along. The warning was given. She reported to the United Earth government. They chose not to heed it. Then we proceed with Protocol 17. The Secretary General replied, "Humanity will not be caged." The Velith fleet arrived at the human colony of New Helsinki, expecting to find grateful acceptance, or at most token resistance that would quickly give way to pragmatic cooperation. They found neither. The colony had gone dark 3 days before their arrival, with all communications ceased, and all orbital infrastructure abandoned, and every ship capable of faster-than-light travel vanished into the depths of space. Where did they go? Fleet Commander Varys demanded as his ships scanned empty stations and silent habitats. Everywhere. One of his officers replied with confusion clear in her voice. Our tracking data shows their ships scattered in dozens of different directions. Toward regions we have not even surveyed. The same pattern repeated across human space as colonies went dark and populations disappeared, and the carefully planned peacekeeping operation found nothing to keep peace over. They cannot hide forever. Counselor Thyras insisted when the reports reached Harmony Prime. They will run out of supplies and be forced to return to civilized space. You do not understand, Sirith said with exhaustion weighing down every word. They are not hiding, and they are not running out of supplies. Then what are they doing? Thyres demanded. Adapting, Sirith replied. The way they have always adapted to every threat that tried to control them. Within weeks, the galactic economy began to shudder as human trade routes rerouted around Velith space and human merchants refused contracts that would bring them anywhere near Velith influence. They are cutting us off, one economic advisor reported with alarm. Human shipping carried nearly 30% of intersector commerce, and they have redirected all of it to neutral systems. We will survive without their trade, Counselor Thyras declared, though her voice held less certainty than before. We will. Sirith agreed. But many of our protectorate species depend on goods that only human colonies produce, and those species are already asking questions we cannot answer. The questions began arriving within days as species that had accepted Velith protection for millennia suddenly wanted to know why the humans had chosen differently. Ambassador Park Ji-won has offered to meet with any species that wishes to understand humanity's position. Sirith reported to the council, and 17 of our protectorates have already accepted her invitation. She is trying to turn them against us, Counselor Thyras accused. She is answering their questions honestly, Sirith corrected. And honesty may be more dangerous to our system than any fleet. The meetings happened on neutral ground, and Sirith was not present, but he heard reports from Velith observers, who watched with growing concern as protected species learned that another way was possible. The colony delegation asked how humans survived without protection. One observer reported, Ambassador Park showed them the history of human independence movements, and the colony left the meeting asking why they had never tried something similar. The Vorthian representatives wanted to know why humans refuse safe worlds for dangerous colonies. Another observer added, Ambassador Park introduced them to colonists from New Bizon, who spoke about achievement and purpose and meaning with such passion that 3 Vorthian delegates requested permission to visit human space. This must stop. Counselor Thyras declared his emergency session after emergency session failed to contain the spreading doubt. How would you stop ideas? Sirith asked with a weariness that came from watching his people make the exact mistake he had warned them against. The answer came in the form of a proposal to blockade human space entirely and cut off all contact between humanity and Velith protectorates until the dangerous influence could be contained. Cirith opposed the measure with every argument he could muster, but the council voted to proceed, and Velith warships moved to seal the borders of human territory. The blockade lasted exactly 12 days. On the 13th day, Velith border stations detected unauthorized transmissions originating from inside protected space and carrying human broadcasts that reached every species under Velith guardianship. The broadcasts did not call for revolution or violence or rebellion against Velith authority. They simply told stories of humans who had faced impossible challenges and overcome them through determination and ingenuity and refusal to accept that anything was truly impossible. Stories of colonies built on worlds that should not have supported life and technologies developed under pressures that comfortable species never faced. Stories of freedom and struggle and meaning that could only be found by those willing to risk everything for something greater than safety. How are they transmitting through our blockade? Fleet Commander Varys demanded as his ship scrambled to locate the source of the broadcasts. They're not transmitting through the blockade. His communications officer reported with something approaching admiration in her voice. They left automated relay stations hidden in our space months ago and programmed them to activate if we ever tried to cut them off from the galaxy. They planned for this. Varys realized they planned for everything. Cirith said when he heard the report, because planning for everything is what humans do. The broadcast continued for weeks while Velith ships hunted for relay stations that seemed to multiply faster than they could be destroyed, and protected species absorbed messages that planted seeds of doubt about everything they had been taught. We are losing them. Councillor Thyras admitted in a private meeting that Cirith was surprised to be included in. 3 protectorates have formally requested independence, and 7 more are debating similar measures. Because you tried to cage a species that cannot be caged. Cirith replied without sympathy, and in doing so, you showed every other species what cages look like. The withdrawal happened gradually as the Velith Collective accepted that continuing the blockade was causing more damage than abandoning. It and the peacekeeping fleet returned to Harmony Prime with nothing to show for its mission, but hard lessons learned. Ambassador Park Ji-won requested a meeting with High Mediator Cirith on the same diplomatic station where their first conversation had taken place, and he accepted because he no longer had any other options. The warning was given. Park Ji-won said as they sat across from each other in the same chamber where everything had begun. Yes, Cirith agreed, and we did not listen, and now everything has changed. Not everything, Park Ji-won replied with a warmth that surprised him. The Velith Collective still exists, and your protectorates still need guidance, even if some of them are questioning what form that guidance should take. We tried to protect you, Cirith said with sorrow weighing down his words. We genuinely believed we were acting in your best interest. We know, Park Ji-won acknowledged, and that is why we are offering you something that we have never offered any species that tried to control us. What could you possibly offer us? Cirith asked. Friendship. Park Ji-won replied simply. Not protection from above or submission from below, but genuine partnership between equals, who respect each other's right to choose their own path. Cirith sat in silence for a long moment, while he processed an offer that his species had never received because they had always been the ones offering protection to others. You taught us something, he finally said, something that 40,000 years of guardianship never revealed. What did we teach you? Park Ji-won asked. That protection is not something you give to others, Cirith replied as understanding finally settled into his ancient heart. It is something they must claim for themselves, or it has no meaning. Park Ji-won smiled and extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement, and Sirith reached out and took it. "Welcome to the galaxy," she said, "as it truly is rather than as you tried to make it." Outside the viewport, stars burned with the same light that had illuminated human struggles for millennia, and Sirith understood at last why that light had never been dimmed by any force that tried to control it. Some species were meant to be protected. Humans were meant to be free. High Mediator Sirith gestured for the chamber lights to dim as he prepared to listen to whatever explanation the human ambassador believed would justify her species refusing protection from the oldest guardians in the galaxy. "Show me," he said, with the confidence of someone who had studied thousands of species and believed there was nothing left in the cosmos that could surprise him. Park Ji-won stood and walked to the holographic control panel, where she input a series of commands that overrode the Velith, displays with images from Earth's own historical archives. "Your records of humanity begin approximately 200 years ago, when we first achieved faster than light travel," she said, as the chamber filled with images of a blue and green world orbiting a yellow star. "But our story begins much earlier than that." The images shifted to show a planet locked in ice with massive glaciers covering most of its surface, and small groups of primitive humans huddled around fires and caves that offer barely any shelter from the killing cold. "Our species nearly went extinct 7 times before we ever built our first permanent settlement," Park Ji-won explained while the Velith watched images of ancient humans struggling against environments that should have destroyed them. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years, and volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun, and plagues that killed more than half of everyone alive. "Many species face extinction events," Sirith replied, though his voice had grown quieter. "It is tragic but not unique." "True," Park Ji-won agreed. "What is unique is what we did during those events and what we became because of them." The images changed to show humans spreading across their world and building civilizations, and then destroying those civilizations in wars that consumed entire continents before building again on the ashes of what had come before. "We learned that nothing is permanent," Park Ji-won continued. "Not peace and not safety, and not the comfortable lives that our ancestors occasionally managed to build between disasters." The Velith watched in growing discomfort as the images showed war after war, with weapons growing more terrible with each passing century, until the humans had created devices capable of rendering their entire planet uninhabitable. "You developed weapons that could destroy yourselves," one of the Velith officials observed with horror evident in her voice. "And you used them. Twice," Park Ji-won confirmed as the images showed 2 cities vanishing in nuclear fire. "And then we built more of them because we had learned a lesson that your species apparently never needed to learn." "What lesson could possibly justify such madness?" Sirith demanded. "That the only thing more dangerous than having the power to destroy everything is letting someone else have that power while you do not." Park Ji-won replied with a calmness that made her words even more unsettling. She changed the images again to show humans spreading to their moon and then to other planets in their home system, while wars and conflicts continued on their homeworld. "Below, we never stopped fighting each other," she said. "And we never stopped expanding, and we never stopped building new ways to destroy ourselves and our enemies. This is not a history to be proud of," Sirith said, though his voice had lost its earlier conviction. "I am not trying to make you proud," Park Ji-won replied. "I am trying to make you understand." She walked among the holographic images of human history, while the Velith delegation watched in silence. "Every attempt to control humanity has failed," she continued as images showed. "Empires rising and falling and revolutions spreading like fire across continents. Every tyrant who claimed to know what was best for us ended up dead or forgotten, while the people they tried to protect carried on without them. We are not tyrants," Sirith protested with genuine hurt in his voice. "We only want to help." "So did they," Park Ji-won replied as images showed. Religious leaders and political reformers and well-meaning rulers who'd all tried to save humanity from itself. They all believed they were acting for our own good, and they all discovered that humanity does not respond well to being saved. She stopped walking and faced a Velith delegation with an expression that held no anger and no threat, but something that might have been pity. Your offer came from kindness, she acknowledged. And that makes this conversation harder, because I cannot simply dismiss you as enemies who wish us harm. Then accept our help, Sirith urged with desperation creeping into his musical voice. I cannot, Park Ji-won said, because accepting your protection would require us to become something other than what we are. And we have learned through thousands of years of bloody experience that changing what we are is not possible. She returned to the holographic controls and brought up a new image showing the current map of human space with its hundreds of colonies scattered across dozens of star systems. You showed us statistics earlier, she said. 300,000 dead in the past decade from preventable disasters on hostile worlds. Yes, Sirith confirmed. Surely that alone should convince you that our guidance is necessary. 300,000 dead, Park Ji-won repeated. Out of a population of 47 billion spread across 183 worlds. She let that number sink in before continuing. We consider that an acceptable loss rate for expansion at our current pace, she said. Not because we do not value those lives, but because we understand that the alternative is worse. What alternative could be worse than hundreds of thousands dead? One of the Velith officials demanded stagnation. Park Ji-won replied with a conviction that silenced the entire chamber. Safety that becomes a cage and protection that becomes a prison and guidance that becomes control. She walked back to her seat and sat down with the calm composure of someone who had said everything that needed to be said. Your protectorate species live in peace, she acknowledged. They are safe and healthy, and their populations grow steadily under your care. Yes, Sirith agreed with pride returning to his voice. That is exactly what we offer. And in 40,000 years of protection, how many of them have achieved anything that the galaxy remembers? Park Ji-won asked with a gentle tone that made the question feel like a blade. Sirith opened his mouth to answer, and then closed it again as he realized that he could not name a single achievement from any Velith protectorate that compared to what their guardians had accomplished. Humanity has been a spacefaring species for 200 years. Park Ji-won continued. In that time, we have developed 17 new methods of faster-than-light travel and colonized worlds that your own surveys marked as permanently uninhabitable and made first contact with more alien species than any other civilization in recorded history. You have also nearly started 3 interstellar wars, Sirith pointed out. Nearly, Park Ji-won agreed with a slight smile. But we did not, and the fact that we came close means we learned lessons that your protected species will never have the opportunity to learn. She leaned forward and her expression grew serious once more. This is my warning to you, High Mediator, she said. Humanity will never accept protection, because protection would make us less than what we are. And if we insist, Sirith asked quietly, then you would become a history lesson, Park Ji-won replied. Another empire that tried to save us from ourselves and discovered that humanity cannot be saved. She paused and her voice softened slightly. You would become something we teach our children about. She continued, a cautionary tale about what happens when good intentions meet a species that was forged in fire and blood and chaos and refuses to be anything else. Sirith sat in silence for a long time while his fellow delegates shifted uncomfortably and avoided meeting his eyes. I do not believe you, he finally said, though his voice lacked conviction. Words are easy, but actions reveal truth. Park Ji-won nodded as if she had expected this response. Then come with me, she offered. Come see one of the colonies you believe we should abandon, and watch how humans live when no one is protecting them. Where? Sirith asked. A volcanic world called New Bizon, Park Ji-won replied. one of the most dangerous colonies in human space, and home to 50,000 people who would rather die free than live safe under anyone else's control. Cirrus should have refused. He did not.